Good evening, we're starting the Sky Island Saga, and that is, I think, the third chapter of Volume 24. We did, however, get a fantastic glimpse of what's to come in the last Alabasta art chapter. It remains bonkers to me that she's so low, but I will say, I'm really glad that Toshiki made it. That said, we were really going well with good momentum and good pacing and good energy, and suddenly we're off in Jaya, and I don't know, I do want to see where this is going, in the sense of how do you get up to the sky. It's a really fascinating question, but I'm just like, I don't care about these assholes. They're just assholes. But here we go. I was actually a little bit worried about starting this one, but I reconsulted the Library of Ahara, and Jaya is only 18 chapters, and Skypiea is 67. So I still don't like this turn of events, but we're already into those 18 chapters, so I think it's fine. Maybe I shouldn't have had to. The last chapter there says the ship sails to the sky, so if we can be done with it in volume 25, that would be great. So we're a few chapters in now, and I don't mind Bellamy and his bunch that much, especially not compared to all the creepy crawlies of the jungle. And I am looking forward to seeing him get the snot kicked out of him, you know? I think it's pulled together nicely. So where we left off, I was frustrated because I felt like we had gone off course and we had lost the pacing and the focus of the arc. I've given myself some time because there was another turn of events, and suddenly we were in Sacred Marajoa with the Navy and some of the warlords of the sea, and Mihawk, and then Ace was back, and Buggy and Elvida were back, and this is shit, right? And I know someone's going to come in and say that's only like two chapters, and you're not entirely correct, because this is just the unnamed island all over again. You know, we had Vivi, we had this, you know, this countdown to Alabasta being cooed, and there's no time, and then suddenly we are on an island, and Chopper is important, yeah, but to do it like this, for Oda to choose to completely wreck his pacing and the focus of his story twice is bad enough. To do it back to back is just kind of galling. This didn't occur to me until I sat down to write up like the last week's reading on my blog. So this is a hear me out. But I do think there's something to it. One Piece started with Luffy eating the devil fruit, and it started with his dream and his intention to get a crew. It's his story. And then, even by the time of Usopp, looking back, things are starting to shift. But really, when they're there to recruit Nami, it really solidifies into, this is about the crew. This is the story of the Straw Hats, not just Luffy. And that itself is fine. I actually really like that change. The problem is that's not where it stopped. because you still have Kobe, and you have Helmeppo and Buggy and Alvida. You have Smoker and Tashigi. You had Crocodile. You had Baroque Works. You have, oh God, Wappo, the king that eats everything. He's still fucking around. And the 7 warlords of the sea, red-haired Shanks, Ace, Whitebeard, Blackbeard. It doesn't really work as a story about the Straw Hats anymore. There are at this point too many moving pieces to keep this as focused on this crew as the story kind of needs to be. This kind of story needs to be more an ensemble in the vein of Game of Thrones, where you're seeing different characters from different factions. And I think I should have seen this coming when the minisode started. I didn't, but I think I definitely should have picked this up when we got to Django and his story, and when he ended up serving under Hina, and then she showed up, because everything is just, the world is too big now to just follow the Straw Hats. So I thought I would do myself a favour and go and get the rest of the Sky Island Saga. I don't know why I assumed there would only be one more omnibus of it. There are really interesting parts. The Skyrider, for instance. The fact that Conus kind of had no choice but to dope them in is interesting, but she is not a main character, and I don't think that's really going to get delved into because of that. But also, we have hostages, and they've been taken to the altar, and there is some exploration to be done there. But then you have Luffy and Sanji and Usopp, and they have to fight their way through the 4 vassals, and then obviously they're gonna fight Kami and Eru, and 7 volumes of fighting their way through. There were a lot of really interesting bits about the Sky People, and it just feels like we're all just going to be focusing on the fighting now, and I don't care enough about that to really sustain me. I will give it that it's nice to see the crew interacting a bit more, that the mystery of Nolan's execution and his failure has actually been tied in really nicely. We're back to like geopolitics, however, and I wish he wouldn't. Some years ago, I read something to the effect that Oda realised that he wasn't going to write a lot of manga, and so he would have to write a lot in this manga, which I understand, and to an extent I can even admire choosing to do the thing that you want to do. But Oda, you are shite at geopolitics, so I don't know why you keep coming back to this in your pirate story. So let's take stock. Wiper is intractable. He makes Isa cry. She's a little girl. He rightfully asked for everything back. And when he was told no, we need some things, let's negotiate, he was like, well, bring me the heads of X amount of your people, which is... And then I have seen it and I have read it, and I cannot get my head around the fact that he might have shot into his own people. why. Meanwhile, Ganfer has straight out coming out and said, you know, I was so close to securing peace between our people. Him, of course. Him. He's the one. He's the hero. A Wiper, of course, being the problem in that. The obstacle to be overcome in that. And then there's Noland, who I understand being charmed by him a little, and I do think he is written to be charming. He's very reminiscent of Usopp, but he saw this city, this El Dorado, and then he went home and got the fucking Navy to come for the gold. And did you consider that? Did you realize what narrative you, like, are we supposed to be sad at this point that Noland was executed, or relieved? Having Clonus be the only one going to the Shandings and saying, hey, everyone's evacuating because Skype is going to be destroyed, is one of the few moments where I think Oda isn't completely out of his depth with this, which is very low praise, I know. I really started to enjoy it more when we got into just like the focus on Eneru, the focus on the battles, which is where Oda is strongest. Seeing Eneru's face when he realized that Luffy was immune to lightning was great, and I do love that they've been kept separate for so long, because it's something that, you know, I am aware that rubber doesn't conduct electricity, and so that's been like building up for me in the back of my head, and such a great payoff. But I also like that, okay, so this is purely like coming from someone who understands like how long the series has been going at this point in time, 2026. Because like Crocodile was great and everyone had to kind of level up for that. But I think as well with, I don't know if Bellamy was supposed to be misdirect or there was supposed to be more with him. But the idea that, you know, all the the devil fruit people are a threat, and then, you know, one punch did him in. It was satisfying in the moment, but I did also worry about how fast they're powering up. And I think that's still a concern for me. But Eneru really feels like an enemy who's kind of risen to the occasion. Because like the four, his lackeys, they were not that much of a threat and not that interesting, all things considered. And I was wondering if we were kind of in danger of plateauing a little. But Eneru is fantastic. And it's genuinely like, oh my god, how are they going to deal with this? How are they going to come out on top? And I think it's a really great tension to have back in the series. I am disappointed with Nami, though, the way all of this is kind of panning out with her. I really thought that the three batons would have been interesting in a fight with Eneru. And in fairness, there is still time, but yeah, it didn't really do anything, you know. Being so close to the end, however, I am kind of excited to see what's going to happen now and how it's going to play out. We have like the final confrontation. I want to see how this is going to end. I am a little curious if Eneru is going to die or if it's just going to like punt him off and maybe he'll come back at some point in the future. Or the bell, actually. I'm really intrigued by the bell and this like century of lost history and Shandians. I think overall we have like a volume and a half left. I did unfocus my eyes to kind of find where it ends. We have this much left. And I think that should be enough time to get some juicy morsels and wrap things up. I have thoughts about Mantra, but I think we're going to just leave that until the end. So it's time. I'm this far in. It is mostly flashbacks, which I think was a really good choice. Oda, I would say, is best with his fight scenes, but while the action was great, and I was actually enjoying that, we kind of needed something to break up the tension a little bit. Variety is the spice of life. Nolan and Kilgara's friendship is deeply compelling. Deeply. And I was touched by it. I even got a little bit misty at the end, but it kind of takes the Shandanes from being this indigenous people who were forced off of their home and are freedom fighters, and it kind of puts the focus on Nolan, obviously not as like the motivation for freedom fighting, but like it feels like he is a central reason for it in the narrative, and I think emotionally that kind of works in the sense of like, you know, Nolan better than you know the geopolitics of the situation, because again, Oda is not great at this, but I don't like it, and it tries to paint him as like this well-meaning guy, but it also paints him as like this really smart man, and a really smart man would have seen the king's eyes light up when he said City of Gold, and was like, your crew are not allowed to come with you, we're taking the entire army, navy with us, and we're going to this City of Gold. And it's like, I do not for 1 second believe Nolan is dumb, partially because you've given me absolutely no reason to believe that, but also like, even if he was, like, everything aside from that is heinous. I'm going to start with the least troublesome, and that is that Nolan kills a god, and Kilgara kind of immediately starts being like, oh, you're just a snake, and then just in a few pages says to Nolan, we respect our ancestors as we would gods, and it's like, my dude, I just watched you 180. No, I don't think you do. Seriously, Nolan comes in when the island is having troubles with sickness, and he knows how to cure it. And then you have Seto turn to Kilgara and say, what is progress? And I just despaired. One of the reasons why Nolan and Kilgara's parting, and relationship even, is so compelling is because it was kind of on bad terms. Like, Kilgara invited him back, but they hadn't been talking for a few days. Or weeks, even. And I just... You could do this, but not the way Oda has, because it just felt very childish, and that immediately made me go, oh. Like, the fact that they just would not talk felt very petulant, very toddler throwing a tantrum, and it made me think of Wiper and Ganfer's discussion. Like, the fact that Wiper wouldn't even be open to like a conversation about peace. And Ganfer can be goofy, but he looks out for his people, and he tries to look out for the Shandanes, and Wiper is just like making kids cry. And so it just, like, it really plays into that, like an argument you will see in colonizing countries like Britain was like, oh, they're emotional, they're unreasonable, they're childish, and we are going to come in and we're going to be like paternalistic because we are the rational ones, we are modern, and we are right, and we're rational, and we're civil, and we're going to take care of you. Take care. And it's just, it fits that mold so perfectly, and it's gross. So I'll give Oda this. It's still really, really readable, and I still breezed through it. It did, unfortunately, manage to get worse. However, while I don't like things like pulling Goldie Rogers, it is intriguing. I will give it that. It is intriguing. As you can probably tell, however, I am so tired and kind of out of it, so I will be reading off my notes. Right, so I'm glad that Wiper was one who filled the stock, because for a moment there I thought, oh, he's really going to have Solo do it. But no, it was Wiper, and that was a really good moment. I don't like that the finale really kind of pushed for like the ringing of the bell to be all about Noland. This arc has left like a really bad taste in my mouth, and well, my notes say it ended on that, but that's actually not. That's not the worst bit, and that's not the last. The last was like ending on the shandy and saying, "No, we're warriors. We shouldn't be leaders," and it's like, okay, very. I'm not going, like, we've already talked all about like the boxes he's put these two groups in. We don't need to do that again. I am glad that the Shandines weren't massacred. I do still think, for the threat that you argued in our posed, it does feel a little bit toothless to then be like, they lived. But also just, did they? We know the leader of the Sky Islanders is called Kami. We know about their law enforcement. We know about the military and the ranks of it. We know about their government. We've actually seen their, whatever the equivalent of parliament is. We've explored their island. We know about their technology, their means of travel. We even saw like Anero's leadership and his vassals and his government. And who are the Shandians is kind of where I'm at. Because they kept talking about their ancestors and their gods, and the ancestor trees were cut down, and they stopped worshipping the gods they stopped worshipping the snakes as the gods, and we didn't see any other gods for them. Even Kagara even killed one. They have no shaman-like intercessors left. He died with the plague. The original meaning of the bell to the Shandians, I don't think was ever gone into like much depth. I don't really want to be definitive with my brain being like cottage cheese right now. So, but even like narratively, it only mattered in relation to Noland, and then to Noland's descendant. And then, Robin comes in at the end and is telling them what the Poneglyph means. And she has to, because they can't read it. And when she comes in and does that, she tells them that it has served their purpose. And it is nice, I guess, to end a war story on, we no longer have to fight. but also the only thing that they had as an identity was that they were warriors, and now they're just not, and they aren't taking leadership. This isn't like we're having co-leaders, you know. It's not the old guy and Ganfer, it's just Ganfer as leader, and it's like every identifier that you gave them, and you didn't give them any, has just been wiped out. So like it's shallow world building. The fact that it's not the fact that you didn't care to put any detail into them as individual characters, and also as like a people, except to further both Noland and like your overarching Ponglyph thing. I think it's really telling, and it's really disappointing, and it's bad world building. Ever and again, I regret not talking about the guys spying on the girls in the baths. I didn't do it because I was annoyed, and it keeps coming up, and this time in the SBS corner. To end this on a more positive note, well, I don't think I'm going to enjoy the next volumes that I have. I didn't notice that I started reading chapter 303. I was so into it. And so Don Quixote do Flamingo is like a great, I love the name, it's ridiculous and it rolls off the tongue really nicely. I'm not going to, like, I love someone coming in their introduction just being like murdering someone. I'm also not going to say that's a double standard with like Belmare, because I was shocked when that happened, and I do think this is possibly more likely to be a parents complained thing. But I am intrigued by his role in like this new age that he's talking about, that he clearly wants to happen. I am really intrigued by Goldie Rogers being tied into like the Ponglyphs. Not my favourite thing, we know, but very intriguing that he is involved in like this century that has kind of disappeared from the history books, because it makes it something that just feels old and kind of brings in something more recent, and I think that's intriguing. I also really enjoyed the chapter title minisodes with Ace. It's not a complete story yet, but it's silly and kind of sweet, and you know, it's good fun. I don't inherently dislike when Oda goes dark, but where we ended, there were so many funny moments, and I feel like, given that his ideas are promising, even if I'm a little iffy on the execution, if it doesn't go quite as dark again, if we're not dealing with coups and geopolitics and war, and I think I can at least enjoy it for its humour. Anyway, I know this has been a rough one, so thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you in the next one.